What do you think of when I say the modern teenager? You might think of a constantly changing world around them, struggling to adapt with new situations and things that are different than generations past. You might also think of the rise of mental health awareness. These issues affecting teenagers are something our society has never seen before and is more crucial than ever to foster a healthy discussion about mental health. I had an idea while staying inside during the quarantine portion of the pandemic. I was thinking about all of my experiences throughout high school and the struggles that I went through. And one thought came to my head. No child deserves to be feeling like they're alone. Enter Modern Adolescents. Modern Adolescents is a podcast and a website where I have conversations with teenagers and professionals alike regarding mental health in the 21st century. I saw the growing importance of media in our culture and wanted to use it to create a positive change amongst teenagers. My goal with Modern Adolescents is to foster honest conversations about real teenage issues, things that are actually pertaining to us in the modern day. I wanted to create Modern Adolescents to be a space created by teenagers for teenagers, to help foster a sort of connectiveness with mental health. Because really, it's teenagers living these modern day issues, and we should be the ones to talk about our struggles with them. Once the seed was planted, the real work began. I had to learn how to make a podcast. I acquired all the equipment necessary, a microphone, a headset, all the accessories going with it, as well as my own personal camera and laptop. It was important to me that Modern Adolescents be a video podcast so that people could see the real conversations going on and that they were real people and not just voices talking to them. And then I got to work filming practice episodes where I could learn how to mix the audio, line it up with the video, do everything together and upload it to YouTube. Okay, here we go. Welcome to the first episode of the untitled podcast so far. I don't have a name. That's like the number one thing you need, and I literally don't have a name. I'm probably Modern Adolescent. I don't know. Names are hard. These took a while for me to figure out, if I'm being honest. There were constant struggles in learning new technology, learning new programs, and just finding my own voice with a podcast. It's okay. Oh my, how do I word this? It's been a rough learning process to figure out how to do this, and this is just the rough draft. On top of this, I also knew I wanted a place to store Modern Adolescents. I had to also become a web designer. I worked hard to create my website to be a place that could both foster the podcast as well as have a blog option where both myself and other people could post their own experiences with certain topics. I had to think hard about what makes a good website and also how to advertise myself through things like social media, Instagram, word of mouth, things like that. Once all this planning had been done, I was finally able to have real conversations. Welcome to the first episode of the Modern Adolescent podcast. What? So I pushed out a survey to the people that followed me on Instagram, and I got 51 responses on it, so thank you so much if you responded to my survey. Very, very grateful for your responses. Modern Adolescence has touched upon topics like trying to be a perfect student, burnout, the adjustment to the 2021-22 school year, mental health education, things like social media, all of these topics. And I work to find students and professionals alike who are eager to talk about these topics and have a real conversation.
Because I know that sometimes I do things that aren't necessarily good for me or good for my mental health, but I keep doing them anyway. Because I'm already committed, or I've been doing it for so long. But I want everybody who's watching to understand that it's important to say no, or to respect or create boundaries for yourself as well.
And then switching to fully in person, it was a lot for me, I think, because I didn't have that big checklist to check everything off and just get everything done. It was more of that slow and steady pace, which is helpful at times and it can feel good, but also it's just things start to pile up a lot and it can feel really overwhelming.
Do you actively have steps that you take for self-care or to kind of just make yourself feel a bit more motivated, give yourself a new drive?
Absolutely. I think that the first step for me is making connections with people that I know and trust. My freshman year, the amount of trusted adults that I had in the building was maybe one. Now I can think of at least 7 people in the building that I can go to, cry to, whatever it is, rant to.
I
I've learned in my research that a lot of states, they don't even require any education on mental health and mental illness at all. Could you possibly speak on some of the requirements that Shrewsbury or Massachusetts has when you're producing your curriculum on mental health?
So, yeah, it's so frustrating that health and PE are not required in so many places. It's just so frustrating because if learning about your body and taking care of your body isn't one of the most important things ever, I don't know what would be more important.
This presentation is just the beginning, and I'm excited for the future to come. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed that video detailing kind of the story of modern adolescence and my main mission with that. Once again, my name is Katelyn Smith, and I'm so glad you're here today watching my presentation. In this slides presentation, I mostly just want to go over a little more in detail my motivation creating modern adolescence, what I've done with it, and what I'm planning on doing in the future. So just in general, kind of the mantra of modern adolescence is that it's honest conversations about teenage mental health issues. My main thing was those honest conversations. I wanted this to not feel super structured or kind of forced. I really wanted to get to the nitty-gritty of what teenagers are struggling and really dive deep. And I wanted to speak with both teenagers and professionals about what is going on and what could be done better. And that's what I sought out with modern adolescence. So why is this important in general? In the current day and age, teenagers are facing new circumstances that have never been seen before with, things like social media or just the change in the world in general. We're facing things that are completely different than generations past. Teenagers, they want to feel supported with mental health. And I think having that by teenagers for teenagers model really does help with that. There's no strict regulation around the country with mental health educations. Certain states do have requirements with what they teach with mental health, but certain states don't have anything. So if you're a child, maybe unfortunate to live in a state that doesn't have any mental health education, you might not get the resources that you might need at a time. And I wanted to create modern adolescence to be a thing where if you're a child like that, you can go to and you can feel supported with the struggles or the issues that you're facing. And also in that by teenagers for teenagers model, I wanted to make sure that students felt comfortable coming to modern adolescence, that they didn't feel like they were being lectured or anything like that, that they could relate to what was going on. Because as a teenager myself, I'm facing the same issues that every teenager is facing. So I asked students on a survey if they could talk a little bit about their mental health experience in high school. And I wanted to break down some of the stats for you here. One of the most staggering things I saw was 98% of the 51 people who responded to my survey said that the mental health resources provided to students had to be improved to some degree. Now, it should be noted that I put this in a ranked category system, with basically at the top being the resources don't have to be improved at all, and then the resources have to be somewhat improved, mildly improved, and then at the bottom was there's no resources that are adequate. But only I think one person in that survey said that the resources are perfect, they don't need to be improved. So 98% of the survey respondents said in some degree, the mental health resources that they're provided needs to be improved. On top of that, 75% said that their high school was either mildly supportive or not supported at all when it comes to mental health. I think that is a very staggering number, seeing that really students aren't feeling like the culture that their high school is supporting them and their everyday life. They're interacting with people, they're going to class, doing other things, and they're not feeling supported. Also, 86% said that their high school had an unhealthy environment regarding grades. Now, grade stress and grade pressure was something that I definitely faced in high school, and I touched upon later in modern adolescence, but 86% of my survey respondents also said that they were feeling kind of that same unhealthy environment when it came to grades. And then finally, 66% of my survey respondents, so 2/3, said that their high school had not adjusted its mental health resources adequate with COVID-19. COVID-19 was a very unusual circumstance to be in, and a lot of students found themselves struggling at that time. And 66% reporting that the resources that they were provided weren't adjusted adequately was pretty staggering. Also, in that same survey, I asked people to write out some of the common stressors or struggles they reported in high school. What do they wish that they had learned? What do they think the school should improve on? And these were some of the most common responses. A lot were pertaining to, school and grades, and time management, academic competitiveness. So all kind of lumped in the same topic, but also, family and home life, social status. And the main thing that stood out to me was balancing proper care for mental health. People found that they didn't have the time or the resources to find the proper care for mental health that they needed. And that was very, very prominent to me. So taking all of these issues into account, Modern Adolescents has spoken on the following topics: pressure to succeed, burnout, the 2021-22 school year, mental health education, social media, COVID-19, and of course, many others to come. These topics right here were kind of things that I saw in my everyday life and from that survey that really were affecting teenagers, and I wanted to get to the nitty-gritty on those issues. So breaking down some of the episodes, I've made 5 episodes of Modern Adolescents so far. Episode 1 really just focused on introducing Modern Adolescents. I broke down the statistics from the previous survey. I really laid out the motivation that I had for starting this podcast website, and I kind of tried to drive up support and market myself to receive more views for later episodes diving into more specific topics. Episode 2 was my first guest episode, and we talked about the overwhelming pressure to succeed in high school. This was one of the things that really affected me going through high school, was this pressure to succeed, get perfect grades, all of this stuff. And I talked to senior class president Hannah Weldi about that pressure, and we had a really great conversation kind of about our own personal experiences and what we've done to relieve that pressure that students are facing. So episode 3 was not something I originally anticipated at the start of Modern Adolescents, but going back into the 2021-22 school year, we were brought back into the 5-day model. Extracurriculars had been starting up again. It started to feel kind of like how it felt before the pandemic, and that was a rough adjustment for me, and I know a lot of other students. So I kind of got started with this topic, and I talked to senior Nikki Ram about this peculiar adjustment to the 2021-22 school year, and also how that affected us as seniors with the stress of the college process, things like that. And we had a really great conversation about this unexpected change and how we were handling it. So in episode 4, I talked about the widely talked about issue of burnout with Student Council President Nicole Cardemetrio. I made sure to break down exactly what burnout was and the effect that that can have on students. And then I talked with Nicole about how we faced burnout in our lives in the past and how we're handling it now, and how we're trying to constantly keep ourselves motivated, doing things that keep us productive. And then finally, my most recent episode was episode 5, where I spoke about mental health education. This was the main thing I really wanted to get out with Modern Adolescents, was the importance of mental health education in high schools. That's where kids are getting a lot of their information about mental health is through their health classes in high schools. And there's, high schools that don't even offer a health class. So it was really important to me to do an interview with a health teacher. And I interviewed Miss Morin from Shrewsbury High about the the specific requirements in health education, and how they kind of develop their curriculums and how that can be so beneficial to students learning about mental health. So on top of the Modern Adolescents podcast, I also created the Modern Adolescents website. So the Modern Adolescents website houses all of the podcast episodes, as well as links to my social media, like my Instagram, and also a kind of new feature that I wasn't really originally planning on, which are blog posts. So you can see on the side right there is one of the blog posts that I've posted. The website also includes the ability for visitors to directly contact me if they have something that they really want to talk about or they want to write a blog post for. They have the ability to contact me directly and we can get working on that. So finally, for the future of Modern Adolescents, I really hope to expand past the Massachusetts area, the Central Mass area, and have honest conversations with people across the country. You know, there's different issues that teenagers are facing outside of the Central Massachusetts area, and I want to touch upon as wide as possible. I want to, you know, get the word across and spread Modern Adolescence. And I know this Capstone project is just the beginning of something greater, and I'm really, really excited for what the future of Modern Adolescence holds. And then finally, here is the work cited for my presentation. Most of Modern Adolescence I found ended up being through the honest conversations with teenagers, but when I ever needed specific statistics or research, things like that, these are the resources that I used. Thank you so much for coming to my presentation today, and I hope you check out Modern Adolescence on your own time.